This is the Active Church. To God be the glory.
I want to talk to you about a bit of a murder scene over here. One of these instruments has been used to put a hole in this man's body. The object entered in at the front here near the heart area and came out the back. And there is a pool of blood all around. And so whenever you have a situation where there's a hole in the front of a person and a hole at the back of the person and the person's lying on the floor dead and there's a pool of blood all around them, you know who gets called. They call the police. And so we have two investigators that come in here to investigate what in the world is going on. You see, at the end of the day, the police can never leave a situation like this, can they? Whenever a body is lying somewhere and it looks like they haven't died of natural causes, then what needs to happen is there needs to be an investigation to find out what's going on. And I want you to imagine just for a second right now that you are a homicide detective. If you don't know what a homicide detective means, you are a murder detective. And you are called in to come and investigate this murder scene. And you come across this murder scene and you find a man lying dead on the floor. There's a bullet wound in his chest near his heart. And on the floor beneath him is this pool of blood. And that is the evidence. That is the evidence. And then two men come in from the SAP to come in and investigate the scene. Their names are Mike and Colin. Now, I want to tell you about Mike and Colin. They're two interesting fellows because Mike and Colin are defined by their beliefs. They are defined by what they believe, and what they believe seriously affects every single investigation that they undertake. First of all, if you look at Mike, Mike believes that where there is a body with a bullet hole, there must be a bullet. I asked for one bullet, I got more than I bargained for, and I got this one, so I thought, I'm going to use, because can you imagine this thing coming out of this pistol, you know what I'm saying? Bwah! You understand? If that guy was thinking about being dead, you know what, after this, he's going to be dead, you know what I'm saying? If he was thinking about being alive, when this bullet comes out here, you know what I'm saying? Okay, then there's going to be some serious destruction taking place in the life of that person. And so Mark believes that where there's a body with a bullet hole, there must be a bullet. And if there's a bullet, there must be a gun. All right? That just seems to make sense to Mark. And where there's a gun, there must be a shooter. I mean, if this gun's just lying over there, and this poor gentleman comes in and walks in, that gun's not going to do anything to him. It might do something if it falls off onto the floor and something somehow causes the trigger to go off, but generally that only happens in the movies, you know what I'm saying? Normally when this moves, there's either got to be a finger that does this, or maybe as it falls off, it catches a nail or something, and you know what I'm saying? That could happen, but the likelihood, I mean, if I were to tell you that happened to this guy, Mark would say, look, I can't believe that, I can't accept that. It doesn't make sense to me. And where there's a gun, there must be a shooter. And unless this was self-defense, the shooter's a murderer. Would you all tend to agree with Mark on that one? Unless the shooter was defending themselves, the shooter's a murderer. So where there's a murder, there must be a murderer. And so Mike believes in the existence of murderers, so he's a murderist. Tell the person next to you that Mike is a murderist. But then on the other end, you've got Colin. Now, Colin also works for the SAP. But Colin believes something very different to Mike. You see, Colin believes that where there's a body with a hole, there must be an unfortunate coincidence. Something happened by accident to cause this terrible situation to take place. But at the end of the day, he does not really believe in the existence of murderers. And so Colin comes along and he says, where there's this body and there's a hole, there must be an unfortunate coincidence. And if there's a hole, there must be an explanation. But listen, don't be a psycho. Don't be a psycho, because murderers don't exist. We all know that murderers don't exist. In fact, science has proven it that there's no such thing as a murderer. This is all just a random set of unfortunate events that has caused this to take place. Colin is an amurderist. He does not believe in murderers. Now I want to tell you about Mike and Colin. What they believe and the assumptions that they work on massively affect how they will conduct the investigation. Mike goes and he starts looking for clues. He starts searching all over the place and, he finds the bullet. Now he's got something that he can match back to a gun. He can go and do ballistics and all sorts of things. He's got some evidence here. And he goes along and he investigates and he's searching for a murderer. And he's looking at all the evidence that can point him in the direction that he can find a murderer. He's unequivocal in his belief. He's unwavering in his belief that there is a murderer. On the other hand, if you look at Colin searches for an explanation as to how this could happen without a murderer. And he begins to sit there and look at the situation and he begins to speculate and he begins to work out certain theories and all sorts of things. And what happens is that when Colin comes up with an explanation, the explanation always has a perhaps. And so what happens is that Colin begins to investigate and he brings out his tape measure and he's working out all sorts of angles. And what he finds out eventually is that the bullet actually came from this area over here. Or when I say bullet, what seemed to be a bullet came from this area over here. And then he comes and he looks over here and he thinks about it. You know, if you put a 5 Rand coin over there, and the 5 Rand coin's over there, maybe there's a bit of an earth tremor. You know, you get earth tremors in Joburg sometimes. And so this 5 Rand coin fell into the fire over there. And then what happened is, you see, the fire at this point was a lot hotter than what that fire is right now. Because this happened a long time ago. In fact, that coin probably dropped into that fire months and months ago. And that fire was extremely, extremely hot. And then what happened was that the coin fell into that fire. Perhaps this happened. I don't know for sure. I'm not saying that I know everything, guys. This is what Colin says. But I'm thinking this may have happened, and this may give us an explanation as to why this happened. But this coin fell into this fire at this exact angle that it began to melt. And when it melted, it formed this sort of an elongated shape. And our poor victim over there, he walked in at exactly the wrong time when this chemical explosion sort of took place after this coin had just melted. And there'd been certain things that had happened with certain molecules and all sorts of stuff. And bam! Dwah! And it hit him. He's so unlucky. Talk about being in the wrong place at the wrong time. Killed by a 5 Rand coin that now looks like a bullet. Colin's explanation always starts with perhaps. And so some random chemical reaction killed this poor man. Caused the structure to fly at supersonic speed like a bullet faction. And the object killed the victim, leaving the illusion that there was a murder. But there really wasn't a murder because Colin's an amurderist. When Colin and Mike debate this whole thing, there's never a conclusion. You never come to a result because every time Mike brings evidence, and this is some pretty solid evidence, wouldn't you say? I mean, how can a 5 Rand coin turn into this? Now, you know, hydrogens and atoms and that, they just come together and they start forming stuff. You know what I'm saying? What caused it? Now, we don't know, but something just caused it, you know? And we're trying to prove that this could happen on its own. So we're trying to manufacture this where this could happen spontaneously. But if you manufacture, it's not happening spontaneously. But anyway, we know that this 5 Rand coin formed into this bullet-like structure. And so what happens is there's never a conclusion. Because every time Mike brings evidence, Colin calls him a retard. And challenges his intelligence. And says, dude, you're stupid. And then what happens is that there's another problem. Colin will never find the murderer. How many of you realize Colin is never going to find the murderer? And Colin will never find the murderer because he's not looking for him. This leaves Colin in the unenviable position that he's vulnerable to being murdered. He himself could be murdered one day. And you know, when you look at it, Mike, on the other hand, might just find the murderer as long as he looks in the right place. And as long as he looks at the right evidence, and as long as he follows his gut instinct and his instincts are right, he could find the murderer. But Colin never will. You see, let me tell you something. If you're not looking for something because you don't believe it exists, you'll never find it. And this describes the battle that takes place between theists and atheists. Can we give Bongani a big round of applause? You died a bit slowly on the way down, you know what I mean? But you made a magnificent corpse. You understand what I'm saying? So, thank you, Bongani. Atheists won't find God because they're not looking for Him. They won't find God. And let me tell you, over the months and the years, I've had plenty of debates via the internet. You know, this wonderful thing called the internet with atheists. And the Bible warns of this in Psalm 14, verse 1. The fool says in his heart, there is no God. They are corrupt, their deeds are vile, and there is no one who does good. You know, today the argument exists between God and the God particle. You got one person believes in God, the other person believes in the God particle. I don't know if you heard last year that they said that they found the God particle. I went in and I looked at what the God particle was at the time because Louis Giglia actually spoke about it because it happened around about the time, either during or just before the time that I went to Hillsong Conference last year. And Louis Giglia actually spoke about the fact they found this particle, and what they call it the God particle. So even the scientists, you know, they're saying something there. But what is the God particle? You know, when you get down to it, they talk about certain forces that exist between the little tiny molecular structures at a very tiny atomic level. And there's always one force that they've been looking for that sort of keeps things together. You know, you get things that keep atoms together. You get forces. They know about those forces. But what they're saying is, what are the forces that keep certain atoms together? You know, so that, for example, your body stays together. And then they're saying that force, and it's some type of gravity, and they believe that there's a particle that pulls these things together. But obviously the thing is so dense that it's very hard to find. And so they believe the only way you can find it is if you take these molecules at supersonic speed and you crash them into each other. You might just see some of the debris. And out of the debris, you can find it. But basically, at the end of the day, their view is that gravity created everything. When you really get down to what Higgs boson is, and that's what they call the God particle, they believe that the answer to God and the answer to explaining our life came together without God is gravity. And that's literally what they're saying. And if you take the view of the philosophy of science, and you take that to be your view, and you believe in evolution and the Big Bang and all that sort of stuff, you'll never find God. You will never find God. The philosophy of science works around 6 types or phases of evolution. And I just want to take you through them right now. And this is what, by the way, if you're in school, this is what you're being taught. And if your kids are at school, this is what your kids are being taught. Number 1 is cosmic evolution. That's the origin of time, space, and matter by the Big Bang. So once upon a time, there was nothing. Nothing began to spin. Bwah! Big explosion. And all of a sudden, you had time and space and matter and antimatter. The one time I said to a person, your view is in the beginning nothing. My view, in the beginning God. And then they came back with a very clever answer. Yeah, but that depends on your definition of nothing.